speaker. This is Aida Kim. He's also Spoken President Parent University at Johns Creek High School. And I feel like this is a really relevant topic based on the fact that I kind of see the kids at all the different stages. So I see them at the elementary, and then I see them at the high. And you can kind of see the progression of that competition trap and how it impacts them. So David is going to fill us in on that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here and inviting me. I feel very privileged and honored to be here. I have a private practice out of Duluth. So I see a lot of children, couples, parent-children issues. Depression and anxiety is something that I work a lot of clients with. So one of the most phone calls that I get from the school system is my kid is having suicidal ideation. She's just got a B+ in her final and she's really freaking out. That's kind of the most common phone calls that I get. So a while ago, we started talking about this and we started to think about these different series. So I have a series of talks. One is on escaping competition trap. The other one is on depression and suicide ideation. I have another one on communication style and systems. But there are some overlaps here and there. I have a kind of a presentation for us, PowerPoint. But I'm not really married to this PowerPoint. I mean, I like to think that this is more of an organic space and can really actually talk. We have an hour, and if I speak for a whole hour and you guys walk away, I'm going to call that a failure. I like this not to be a monologue, but a dialogue between us. And somehow, when we're done within our hour, that we get to have a better sense about who you are, who I am, and why this is important, and why it should be important for all of us. Okay? So I do have a structure, but it's really for me, so I can kind of stay on target. But if you kind of stirs something in you, you have a question about it, what I said to you feels not right, or what I said to you feels like, oh, I really resonate with that, I have a story about it, I'm always ears and want you to share, okay? So this is a escaping competition trap. I'm going to talk a lot about this concept of internal locus of control, external locus of control. So internal locus of control is this, something that I can control. It's internal locus of control. Something I can't control is external locus of control. So I really want you to like me, but I really can't control you. Or I shouldn't, I can't, right? So when we're talking about children wanting to do something, it has to be an internal locus of control, right? They have to do it because they really want to. I want to start with that. External locus of control is all but just ornaments, I say. They're ornaments because, like having a fancy degree can't really make you really happy. Living in a nice, really fancy homes can't really make you happy. Driving a nice little car can't really make you happy either. Having a trophy partner can't really make you happy. That has to come from internally, right? So in the same way, when kids have some kind of drive to do certain things, that has to be an internal locus of control. It can't be because I want to please mommy and daddy, right? So that's kind of the crux of what I want to get at today. What is healthy versus unhealthy? It's simply as, does it come from internal? Or so is it something that is external? Is it something that you really want for your kids? And I think that's where kids start to see some symptoms when they feel like, I need to be like this and the other, but I just don't feel like I measure up. So these are something you may be noticing. Their self-esteem really hangs on the things that they are accomplishing. So like somehow, if they do get an A, we should all celebrate and you should be happy, right? But I think the other part is this, if they don't get an A, it's like somehow they feel so devalued and deflated. And you see that in their faces, you see that in their behavior. And that's one of the things that I always look for that is like, okay, What does that A mean for you? What does that B mean for you? Their achievement and their sense of happiness is kind of wrapped around their achievements. Their comments involve achievements, performance component. I did this so well, mommy. So those are all great stuff. But I think, again, the biggest criteria for looking at what is healthy and what is not healthy is, does that really make the person who they are, right? My teacher said I was so great, and they're so related. Okay, those things are things that we should really celebrate, we should really be happy about. But at the same time, if that doesn't happen, right? If that doesn't happen, then does it break your child? Think about this. Think about relationship as a kind of a mirror, right? And a baby knows that he or she is lovable by the gaze of mother and father's eyes, right? Or parents. And so baby's like, oh, and it's all internal, right? Well, in that way, all of our relationship function kind of as a mirror. I know that you're looking at me as I'm talking to you, and although I'm the only one who's talking, I kind of know that you're engaged because you're looking at me and going, oh, you're nodding your head and kind of wondering about this and that and the other, right? So these gaze, this mirror, this kind of relationships that we have right now, even in this room, function as a kind of a mirror, right? And we need to be very kind of critical and understanding about what kind of mirroring that we have with our children. Like, what does our eye say about how you feel, right? So as kids kind of start to get older, these kind of gaze becomes very internalized. And whether you see them with certain eyes or not, they start to internalize that and see, oh, I am very lovable, whatever I do or whatever I don't do. And I think that's kind of where the sense of esteem comes from. It's a kind of a gaze, it's a kind of look, it's a kind of understanding that we have for our children, right? Another danger sign that we have to look at is they're doing all these things, their activities, and they're, for the most part, doing really good at it. They're great, they play hockey, they're in the choir, they are in the debate team, they're really active and they're really good at what they're doing. But sometimes, it doesn't feel like they're having a good time, right? And I think that's another time when we have to kind of take a little break and say, hey, what's really going on here? Is this too much for you? Does this feel like you're overwhelmed and you have to do all these things to make you feel happy about who you are? I have a nephew. He is in 8th grade. And this kid can do it all. My brother got a phone call the other day, and it was not a phone call, email from his teacher, and he was bragging about it to me. He said, this is his science teacher. He said, oh, thank you for having, I really appreciate having Justin in my class. He's such a bright kid. It's a pleasure to teach him. I don't really usually write this kind of email, but I just want to say thank you. And my brother was a leader, of course. So Justin does really, really well in school. He's kind of popular with girls too. He plays hockey. He's in the Cambridge choir. He's taking Chinese. It's just outstanding kid. He does everything. So my brother says, hey, Justin, look, I think you're really overwhelmed because you're sleeping at like midnight, sometimes 1 a.m., and it feels like you're just doing too much. Is there anything that you would rather let go? And Justin's response was, Daddy, I love everything that I do. And he really is good at it, and he enjoys it. And I think that's the kind of thing that we are trying to look for. It's not that we're pushing our kids too much and that they're we have so much things to do on our plate, but are they really enjoying themselves doing it? But if these become a chore, like going to piano lesson, oh, do I have to go to piano lesson? Oh, when it becomes chore, then you really need to kind of ask, is this for me, or is this for Jim or Jill? You know? Yeah. I think I see a little smile in your faces, and I wonder what's going on here. Any thoughts on that?
I
Yes.
have a question. Now, I'm a 10-year-old, and since she was 7 or 6, probably, I am one of those parents who tries to, explore her kid everywhere. She has joined karate classes and given up. She's joined dance classes. She enjoyed for a while, given up, and so on and so forth. So probably 8, 10 classes. Now she's doing guitar, and it's not something that So out of all the musical instruments, she chose guitar, and she said, "This is what I want to do." And she had a home tutor coming and teaching her when we were in India for a year, and we moved here. And now but it's something which she's just doing it. I have to be behind her. Practice your guitar lessons. Practice your guitar lessons. And at times I feel it's for myself. I'm doing it. This is not what she wants to do. But at the same time, this is probably the only class which is left, which she's been doing for a year, and she's kind of pursuing it. And it's not that she completely abhors it or detests it, but she's kind of okay. It really does not affect my life, but I'm okay doing it, but not into it.
Yeah.
As a parent, my question is, when I discuss with my friends, they say, it's your duty as a parent to push them a little bit till 10 or 12. Don't give them too much choice,
Sure.
because otherwise they'll be clueless afterwards.
Absolutely.
So,
I agree with that.
like, do I just let go? Okay, let
Well,
her, keep
here
doing that.
are experts amongst you. This is your peer. I wonder, how many, are there somebody who'd be willing to share, like, I think this is a really good balance, and I see that with my own kid. Anybody have, yes?
I have personal experience. Well, I'm a mother of a 4 and 5-year-old. They own a music school. And so I see firsthand parents who drag their kids in, and the kids are like, I don't want to do this. And then I also see kids, to answer your question, that come in that still want to do it, that see the end game, the goal in mind, but they need a little help getting there. And as parents, it's almost like you want them to, all right, commit to this for just a little while, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
And if you still want to do it, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
But also, to answer your question, I see so many overbooked kids come into my school. It's not like I'm the only thing they're doing.
Absolutely.
I'm the only thing among 5 things they're doing.
Absolutely.
Dr. King, do you subscribe to one of the theories out there that kids go through 3 phases? 1, to please us as parents, 2, to please their friends, and then finally to please themselves? And if so, for you, what general ages do you think that transition starts to occur?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like the framework of that. And I think part of it is that, just like that, is, we see ourselves, we're not mirroring process, that's what I'm talking about. It's really about how do I find myself in the gaze of my parents? And that there's such a need and want to really be loved and accepted by you, right? And when that fails somehow, they're really having a lot of trouble. And then when they start to individuate developmentally, right? Then mom and dad used to be the coolest, the prettiest, the handsomest person in the world, but they're no longer that, right? And we start to see that probably around 7, 8, 9. And then there's a real need for being mirrored by a peer, right? But then, unfortunately, the last stage where I need to really please myself, come on, let's be honest. Don't you struggle with that? I struggle with that, right? It's something that I think is a lifelong journey. And part of the therapy with what I do with my clients is to learning to be their own best friend. And like I have people who are literally a best friend to their best friends, and they are willing to give up time, money, and different kind of resources, emotional resources, financial resources, physical resources to their best friends, but they're not willing to do that for themselves. I have this one client who's been wearing the same shoes for 14 years, never married, so he doesn't have like a lot of expenses, and he's actually quite rich. Same shoes for 14 years, but he likes to drink, and that's why he comes, and he buys drinks for everybody, right? But he hasn't changed his shoes in 14 years. He doesn't do anything for himself, and I think that part is a lifelong journey. But the sooner they learn to do that for your kids, the better, right? And that's where I think where I'm talking about the internal locus control has to be theirs. So if your daughter wants to play piano or guitar, that has to be motivated by her, right? And if she doesn't, I think we have to respect that. And there is a kind of and the fine balance is like, okay, you know, she has all the different interests, and you take her to ballet, you take her to guitar, piano, and actually spend, you know, really a big, you know, chunk of money for that, and they kind of, hey, I don't want to do any of this. I want to do something else. What do you do? Where is the balance? And I don't think there is a magic response to that, to be quite honest. I think every family has a different level of tolerance for that, and I think it has a lot to do with even your own both emotional, financial, physical resources, right? We can't all be everywhere at the same time. And we have to recognize that we live in a finite world with finite resources, finite time. So there's somewhere a balance. And that balance is something that you and your children have to kind of get it together, I think. The word I love is co-creating. So it's not like, this is what mommy said, this is what daddy said, but what do you think? What do you think this might lead us to next space? Yeah.
I would rather my child be involved in something and possibly not be good at a whole lot of things than do nothing. There are a lot of kids. My daughter's in 8th grade at Ultra Mill, and she has a lot of people around her who are just smart, but they're smart, but they're not in any other activities. She plays soccer. That takes up a lot of her time, and we've been getting to the point where we're wondering, do you love this anymore? But on the other side of that are kids whose parents who indulge their kids, and the kids say, I don't want to do very much. I just want to go to school and go home. And those are the kids who end up on drugs because they're bored and they don't do anything. So you're always walking a tightrope about keeping this balance, but your kids have to be engaged in something, and we have to make sure that even if they don't love it, they have something to do, because when they have too much time on their hands, and most people have plenty of resources up here, that's where they end up doing something they have no business doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many resonate with that story? Yeah. Yeah. So we have to keep them busy.
But that's why the middle school was dismissed later.
I'm sorry?
That's why the middle school dismissed later.
I don't know. I don't know that that has anything to do with it, but I've been I used to be a prosecutor for several years, and I used to be in this area. And I tell you, I saw a lot of kids who didn't do much of anything, but what they wanted to. And I saw a lot of parents acting like the roles were reversed. The kids were like, I want to do this, and I'm not going to do that. But they still have cars. They're driving 70 miles an hour on State Bridge Road.
Right.
And they're sitting there telling their parents what they're going to do, and the parents are scared.
Right.
And so we had to step up and say, what is going on? We're gonna take your license for 6 months.
Yeah.
You're not gonna drive, or you can drive to and from work or school. And if you get a ticket, guess what? You don't get it back for a minute.
Yeah.
But we had to step up
Yeah.
and do that. The parents were not able to.
Right. I'm really glad you said that. I mean, that really is a different talk, but it's really important part of this piece, which is that, kids by nature are, from birth to death, they're going to challenge boundaries. And you as a parent, from birth to death, your job is to create a boundary and saying, hey, this is yes, and this is no. But they're just going to always challenge and see how far they can go, right? And your job is to say no. This is the boundary, and that has to be really, really clear, right? Clear and consistent boundary creates really healthy sense of kids. Because they know if I cross this, I'm going to get in trouble. But if they don't know that, what are they going to do? They're going to keep crossing it and crossing and crossing it. But that boundary and that language has to be consistent, right? I'm going to talk about that towards the end of our session, where I'm talking about healthy kind of communication on how to do that. I'll beat you to the punch, but what it is like you can have high expectations of kids and very low support, right? And you can have very high nurturing and low support. What we're looking for is high nurturing, high expectation with high support. And if we can get to there, our kids have different understanding. You know, that's kind of heady. Let me give you a story about that. I run a group for substance abuse. And when I run my group for substance abuse, I am kind of harsh. All the kitty gloves come off, and I'm kind of in your face, and I play the part. And I remember one of my co-therapists who was just beginning tells me, "Dave, how do they take you? You're so tough on them." And all substance abusers we all lie to manipulate not only you, but manipulate me, right? Myself, because I don't know how to be even honest to who I am. So I'm really cutting their face. And so she said, how do they take you? You're so tough on them. But the second sentence to that is, but why do they love you so much? You know? And I think that's the support part, because they know I love them. They know I support them. They know that I am committed to them unconditionally, right? And I think that's where that language of high expectation, high nurturing, and high level of warmth and support has to be part of that language, creating that really strong boundary. But there's a part of me that agrees with you, but there's another part, I think, if we don't address that, we're missing another piece, which is self-esteem. You know, if you really don't want your kids to go awry and try and do risky stuff, you have to instill in them that they're great, that they are bound for greatness, right? Because if they really believe that they are bound for greatness, hey, they're not going to get pregnant at teen, hopefully, right? Because they got stuff to do. They want to go and do stuff, right? But like, if you feel like, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't think I'm going to mind up to nothing, then like, it's not too risky to try those different things, Yes.
How would you recommend balancing that? As a kid, you're bound for greatness, but you're going to encounter failure in your life, and how do you prepare them to deal with it?
That's a great question. And part of it, I think, has to be being really honest about where they are and having a really good, I call that corrective mirroring. We use that word a lot, right? Mirroring. So, for example, I don't have a son, but if I had a son, his name would have been Martin. It would have been Martin Luther King, right? Let's say Martin's 5 years old, and he says to me, "Dad, I want to be an NBA basketball player." And I'm only 5'6.5", something like that. So Martin says, "I want to be a basketball player. Bless his heart. I'm really supportive of you. You can do it, whatever you want." And that's the kind of message that is congruent to at age 5, because at age 5, they're very egocentric, right? Martin is 9, and he tells me, "Hey, Dad, I want to be an NBA basketball player." And he hasn't really grown that much, right? So the congruent message at that point is not to say, "Hey, Martin, you can do whatever you want," because there's a cognitive distance between my lived experience and what Dad's telling me. My lived experience tells me Jim and Larry and John is better than I am in the basketball court. But my dad is not willing to look at that at all, right? Martin knows that he's not the best player out there. And yet, if Dad says, "You can do whatever you want, honey," or "You can do whatever you want, you just put your mind to it," this very incongruent message, there's this cognitive dissonance, and it's a intellectual messages. Dad supports me, Dad loves me, right? But the unconscious, subconscious level of message there is, Dad is not willing to look at me as a third, fourth, or fifth best player in the court. And that is really traumatic for a child. So this incongruent, incorrective mirroring process, right? On the other hand, let's say your kid is a great artist, right? But like you look at a lifestyle of an artist, like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be a starving artist, right? It's like, no, not my kid. She's gonna be a medical doctor or lawyer or engineer, or, you know. And so she brings home this masterpiece, and instead of really being congruent about what that really was, hey, that's so good, you know, you say, yeah, that's pretty good. You know, most kids your age do it just like that, right? That's also incongruent message, and that can be very traumatic. So I think the response to that question is I think we have to be honest, and the kids know they have a really good BS reader, right? And you know, it picks right up, and then they may say it verbally or they know it internally. But whatever you say has to be congruent to them. So you know, that's part of, I think, we're only in the first one yet. Let's go to second one. You may also be noticing kind of simmering anger. Do you see that sometimes? Like irritability. Like you said something that was not really a big deal, but they like, oh, Mom, I could do that, right? Complaints of sleepiness, headaches, stomach aches. Stomach ache is a good teller. Oftentimes, when they're really anxious, they're not digesting well. And when you're at peace, you do breathe your stomach. But when you're really anxious, you breathe your chest. And one of the things that I look for is like how are they sleeping? Are there stomach aches? So these are stuff that you should be looking for: cry spells, irritability, and again, creative, not having a lot of fun. Donald Winnicott is a kind of a famous psychiatrist in England, and he talked about what does mental health look like. For him, he said mental health looked like a kid riding a bicycle down a hill and have his foot up in the air, going, whee, you know. Could our kids enjoy and do that? Do we even have time to go ride bicycles these days? It's really kind of a pretty competitive world, right? I'm going to tell you a story about my brother again. He took his family to Korea to live there for about 5 years. And I think it was a very nostalgic idea of living in Korea. And I grew up in Korea. And in Korea, like, I remember going out to the street, picking up softball games or basketball games and playing with the kids in the neighborhood, right? So like that was my brother's nostalgic idea of going back to Korea and having his kids live through some of that experience, right? Guess what? There's nobody in the streets in Korea. They're all in tutoring or some kind of, they're taking language lessons, they're taking piano lessons, they're taking all this different kind of private tutoring is huge. Actually, even overseas, their educational curriculum in public schools. Like, so when they go to school like this, they kind of fall asleep and they don't do much. But when they get the most of formal education in these tutoring places. They teach you how to score really well in the college examination classes and so forth. And it's so competitive that they don't want to waste time going to classes. They go to these tutoring places. Ronnie Cohen-Stengler, Stressed Out Girls, 2006, said that girls are actually more stressed at early age than boys are. They have different layers of stressors more than boys have at adolescent age. That includes the body image, that includes being accepted by their peers. All of these things are stressors that have different ways to show itself. Let's go to the next one. So, if we are not careful with these messages that we tell our kids, both consciously and unconsciously, we do see some of this stuff. And when I do get a phone call, oftentimes those are the reasons they call me, right? So academic stress, lack of sleep, and fear that their value is tied to their grades, and all those things that we didn't talk about. I'm not sure why I did it. It seems stupid now, but at the time, I felt really overwhelmed and I'm tired and in need of some relief. I couldn't pass the stress and the fear of disappointing everyone. That's something, not word for word, but it's a sentiment that a lot of my clients, especially students, say and express. And I think about, can you go back? That last sentence is so huge, right? They're really, really afraid that they might disappoint somebody, mainly their parents, right? At that age. Their sense of livelihood, their sense of well-being depends so much on how you accept them and love them. Let me give you another quick story. So this is a friend of mine. Her husband passed away when their son was 3 years old. So it was a single mom, and this mother, good friend of mine, just loved her son to death. She would literally give up her life for the son. The son grew up, went to college, came back. We're having coffee, and this is what he tells me. He says, "Hey, Dave, why doesn't my mom really like me that much?" I told him, "Are you serious? Are you kidding me? I saw the way your mom raised you. She gave up everything, and she will still do it today. But why do you think this kid really doesn't get that? What went awry? Do you have a clue?" There are not many reasons why. But part of it is exactly what we've been talking about this morning, is that sense of congruency, sense of I affirm you, the gaze, all those things just didn't happen at all. Like, my friends say, "I support you, I trust you," but then her behavior doesn't really always was congruent to that. Let's say, for example, I'm going to use this kind of a bodily kind of way of showing that. Let's say you have little 2-year-old, 3-year-old just beginning to walk, and you say, I trust you," but if you really trust the baby, you got to let the baby walk, right? And fall at times, because I trust that you're going to be okay and be able to walk on your own, and when you do fall, that you're going to be okay. But if I say, I trust you, right? I'm telling you I'm trusting you, but somehow my behavior is very incongruent. And I love my friend who I just talked about, but there was this kind of, I trust you, but I really don't trust you. Right? Incongruency. So there's a huge component to that internal locus control and external locus control. But I have to be one, I'm doing this because I want to please me. It makes me really, really happy. Healthy achievements is motivated by natural, authentic desire to learn and do one's best. Okay, take pride in the accomplishments of things that I do. And self-esteem is not really dependent on the grade, but did I really put the effort to it? Did I really try my best? Yes.
That's the one thing that I see would struggle with my son.
Yeah.
And we understand that he has the smarts to get the grades. The problem is getting him to put the effort to get those grades.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to show him that I'm dependent on him getting the grade. I'm just dependent on him to do the effort to get the grade.
Yeah.
Whether he got the grade or not and that's one thing I try to reiterate to him, is that I'm not really worried that you didn't get the A.
Yeah.
I'm worried that you didn't try to do the effort to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that he doesn't see the difference.
Right.
And I'm not sure how to, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure how you convey that. And he's 10, but how to convey that is the effort that I'm looking for, not necessarily the outcome.
Right. I think I have some examples of ways to do that. but I think part of it is learning a different kind of language, which is there's a difference between a result-oriented language and process language. So, goal-oriented languages is, hey, how'd you do in math yesterday? And it's a kind of it's either I did well, or I got an A, B, C, or D, but it's a kind of a structure of communication that doesn't create open-endedness, right? So that's kind of a goal-oriented language, whereas, hey, I saw you really study hard last night, thank you, good job, right? How do you feel about that? There's a different, and then your child can, that might be a process language. I have some examples of that. We can go through some of that. But I also see a lot of this. I see more than you can imagine that sometimes anxiety, high-level anxiety, some level of depression can create a person not to be able to give his or her best. But even if they want to, and they really, really want to be the best student they really want to be, sometimes there may be other factors that might be getting in the way of putting my best. I didn't know until I was 34 that I had learning disability. And when I found out what I had, I cried because I was so happy. I was so happy to know that I had learning disability, that I wasn't lazy, I wasn't stupid, I wasn't less than. But my siblings all, they graduated valedictorian. They never seen the B in their entire life. But I had lots of those, right? So I was that really hindered my self-esteem. And then when I found that I had learning disability, I got trained for that. I got treatment for that. My grades were I've never gotten a B since 34. And I was in school till 40s, right? So there may be other things, and again, I think, and I get a lot of students and clients who may have some issues around those things. Performance anxiety is another one, and sometimes the kid that you're describing is really smart, and he or she oftentimes just relies on their intelligence to get by. So some people who are very charming use their charm to get by certain things. Kids who are really, really smart, they may actually do things at the last minute because they know they can get away with it. They've been doing that for years, right? And they may be understimulated. And so we have to think about that as well. And they tend to usually do really, really, really good at things that they really love. And they have, it might be immensely difficult, like calculus, but they love it, they like it, but they can do it. But things that they don't have much interest in, it's I don't care what you give me, I'm not going to do it, I don't want to do it. And I have low level of tolerance for doing things that's not really stimulating you in the right way. So that might be a different issue there, right? It may not be that kid just doesn't want to do it altogether. It might be just, I might have some kind of places that I get stuck on. All right, let's go to another slide. There was a hand there. Did you want to say something?
That's okay.
Okay. Unhealthy achievement. This is exactly what I'm talking about, where all the kind of a success and my wanting to do really well has nothing to do with me. It has to do with external control. And I'm doing this really to please somebody else than myself. Let's go to another one. So balanced achievement, I think, looks like some of emotional development, self-esteem is really important, social development, life skills, physical development. These are all really, really important. But how much time do we spend on these things, right? For kids who are in middle school, high school even, grades are really, really important because that's determining where you're going to go to college. But developmentally, if they fail to hit certain marks, forming an intimate relationship with friends, they're going to really struggle. They really are going to struggle a lot. I have some stories and examples that I brought, but you know, at middle age high school, life skill development, how to you know, develop, manage budget is really, really important. Nutrition, developmental identity, who am I? These things are really, really important, and that happens oftentimes, well, all the time, through social interaction. So like they need to go and play with Fred and Jim and Jim, right? I know we spend a lot of time on math and science, right? But how much time do we really give them to think about spirituality, community building, family, music, right? So I was working at Center for Anxiety-Related Disorder. This is in Boston. And these are the kids that we all dreamed about. And although their names are changed, but they went to these schools there, right? And MIT Mike, he was a PhD guy and a mechanical engineer at MIT. He had to go to see a priest twice a day because he felt like he was unclean. So, you know, he couldn't do anything. Like, it was really, really disruptive because he couldn't sustain a whole day at being in class or doing something else. He had to go see a priest twice a day and confess his sins. And when you look at MIT Mike, man, he had stellar grades, you know, never ever had any issue. I mean, like, all these kids here are just really highly achieving kids. And oftentimes, highly achieving kids have high level of anxiety. You know, so sometimes anxiety is not all that bad. I love it when my students have kind of anxiety because they are the kind of the best students. They all want to get A's, right? They're kind of always pushing themselves. But I think that's what happens is that when we have a lot of expectation, then we can create this false sense of hope, and they gravitate towards something that is unattainable and that they are not very healthy. I want to give some time for us to have more feedback and so forth. So I'm not going to go through all of them. But you kind of get the point that you can do really well in school, but that doesn't really necessarily mean that you're going to really be successful in life, right? And as a parent, you want your kids to succeed in life, right? So one of the things that I think we have to think about is like when you all went to high school, middle school, when I went to middle school, high school, 4.0 was the best grade you can get. We don't have that system anymore, right? It's very, very, very different, and it was a lot more competitive than it is when you and I went to high school and college, right? So I think we have to kind of see that and recognize, yeah, they have a lot of stuff in their plate. 4.0 is not enough. So this is Dennis Pope at Stanford School of Education. And in her book, this is what she says, that the irony of pushing kids so hard is that the business world often finds today's college grads inadequately prepared to meet the needs of a global economy. And these are like Stanford kids, you know? And like, oh, it doesn't say much about creative thinking. It doesn't say much about global economy leaders. It doesn't say, like, we lack in preparing our kids to really prepare for the better world, you know? You know, she says that we are basically saying we are raising a bunch of kids how to jump through hoops really well, but we're not really helping them to cultivate critical thinking and communicators, world leaders. And I think if we are not very careful about how do we spend this very precious time in their school life, you know, we are going to create MIT Mikes and, you know, Leslie.
Dr. King,
Yes.
that one slide up, another question. So do you think that when it comes to the creativity and the leadership, strong communication skills, that we had it 60 years ago and we've lost it, or we've never had it and we're only realizing it now?
That's a good question. There's a study done at the University of Minnesota who looked at just that question. And they would say in the 60s we did have that. And there's a kind of ways in which we need to really think about arts and community work. Even the reading comprehension is lower today than it was in the 60s.
So to take that then to the next question, why are we trying to change things more going forward as opposed to looking at what we did back then and bringing and reintegrating the lessons and the classes and the philosophies and the metrics that we had in the 50s and 60s?
Yeah. But I
Not that it was perfect.
right, now it was perfect, but there's a trend towards that. And certainly China and India is looking at that research that was done in the University of Minnesota about our education system. But I think there's still a lot of diverse voices in the academic community about what education should look like. And nobody really has like, aha, this is the formula for the way to go. But some of the kind of really quick, some factual things are, it is clear that our kids today lack reading comprehension. They lack a lot of different ways. I mean, they may be better in science and math, and like we were trying to compete with China and India about that because we're falling behind in that area too. And what are ways in which we can really boost those grades? And we are looking at our school system and saying, hey, kind of we failed of doing that. But I think we failed not only in our school system, but I think we failed sometimes as a community who really need to be part of that, the education system, and voice our concerns, and be part of that kind of a mindfulness community that we're talking about, right? That we don't, give our kids away to college or students to a school and saying, here they are, teach them, but, and if we don't like what we see, what do we do to encourage the administrative process so that we can have a different outlook on that? But I think we kind of all dropped the ball on that as a community. Okay, let's go to another one. I want to go to the parenting style. Okay, so these are some of the stuff we talked about: outcome messages, process messages. Try to say some more towards the processing comment, and I think that's a habit. It's a practice, but it doesn't come naturally. But you really do have to reframe ways in which we talk about our outcomes of our kids. Yeah. You're excited about kids learning more about the world and their place in it. So, what do you guys think about these? Which ones are facts and which ones are myths, do you think? The title of that is Teens Will Live Up to Our Expectations, Positive or Negative. The first one is teen years are full of conflict and rebellious behavior. Fact? Yeah. False. Peers are more influential than parents. Fact? Myth.
Depends upon how old they are.
Okay. Parents need to crack down or give up in order to survive. Some days. Problem behavior, family conflict, psychological problems are no more common in adolescence than in any other time. Parents who have strong connection with their teens really do have influence on their teens. Peer pressure is overrated. Yeah. Those are all, they're all facts, actually.
All facts?
I'm not, this is not a fact. Peers do not actually have more influence than parents. There's plenty of evidence in research that would say that your relationship with the children actually are a lot more influential than your peers. They want to think like their peers matter more. That's not true. Teens do best when they do stuff. They do have solid relationship with their parents. And that's a fact. Let's hold on to it for a second. Let's go nurture. This is what I talked about earlier about the nurture, discipline, and respect. What we want is not to have one or the other over the other, but they all need to be elevated altogether, right? You can have a high nurture with very low discipline. You can have a very high respect and low nurture, but they all kind of need to be very, very high, right? High expectations is not a bad thing for the kids. They actually need it. They live up to that expectation. But along with that high expectation, there has to be nurturing. There has to be a lot of support. And that support is talked about in research in the words of warmth. And so when they do research on how much are they nurtured, they do the scale on how they perceive their parents to be warm and cold. And the more they experience warmth from you, they experience a lot more feeling of being nurtured by you. There are different names for that. In the previous, it used to be called authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and so there are different names for that. But I think the point that I really want to make here is that what we want is high nurture, high expectation, and high respect, right? When they have this kind of support by you, the research would suggest that they do better at school. They're less likely to engage in risky behavior. They're more respectable. Deal with most conflict easier. Why do you think they would deal with conflict more easier when you have better relationship with you?
Emotionally, they have a better sense of foundation, and therefore they would deal with emotional conflict or anything like that in a better way.
Absolutely. I think we model after you, right? And your own emotional stability, your non-anxious presence, they really kind of take on that, right? Not too long ago, I had this client, I still see them, and I've been doing this for about 16 years, so I've seen quite a lot, but my mouth dropped the way this kid talked to his mother. I could not believe it. The word of effing this and this and the other just came out so violently. I was in the room and I was kind of taken aback. Again, I've been doing this for 16 years. I've seen quite a bit. And I was like, oh my gosh, how could this happen? Something went incredibly awry. And in the same hour, I also saw the mother say the same thing to her child in a very, very similar way. And I go, okay, that's where you get it, right? So it's not only that, but also you're being mindful, you're being fully present. The way in which you are authentic to yourself and to your partner and to your children is something that they also do, right? So, like, if you know how to have an authentic, very good communication and encouraging relationship with you and your partner and other families that they come to your house, they kind of pick up on that, right? So, I want to go with that. Part of it is, the word encourage. I love that word. There's a kind of a cure is a Latin word for heart, right? To encourage is to not something that you say or do, but it's something that happens here, right? It's not something that says, I love you, I affirm you. Those things have to be come from, those things have to come not only through your mouth, but they really have to come through your heart. And they have to really see that. They feel like, oh, mom and dad really get me, and I feel like I can go to them, and it's spoken through your heart. I think that is a challenge, because the challenge I think we posed very beginning of this seminar, which is it is so hard for us to really be the best advocate for me. I mean, we still struggle with that, in our 40s and 50s, right? How do we encourage our children when we don't really have anybody encouraging even us, right? Who's your soulmate? Who's encouraging you? Who's nurturing you, right? And I think it's time that we also have to kind of flip the table and look at where I am, because if I'm not nurtured and I want to be nurtured, sometimes we may even look at our kids for that, where then the parent and children role reverses. So part of the ongoing task is to find ways to both encourage the children that we have, but also find ways to be encouraged yourself, so that we can kind of learn to live our lives not so much here in our head, but more in our bodies. I think that's all I have for us today.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to leave 10 minutes, but I want to stick around and if you have any comments or questions. Yes.
Are there any online resources that can help us research what we've discussed today a little further?
Absolutely. What I can do is, if you can give me emails, I can send you some reference, which I should have had to put it there, but I didn't do it. I can have more references and send you out to you.
I have a question. On the anxiety part, I have one child that I keep saying, oh, it's going to be okay, but she puts all that pressure on herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to say, like the whole thing about college. She's like, Mommy, you don't understand. If you don't have like 50 million APs, you won't get in a good college. And I'm like, there's a college for everyone. And she's like, you don't know. So how do you counteract what she feels is the outside pressure on her, or maybe she's putting on herself? What are some things you recommend saying to your child when they tell you that, and they are going to do whatever it takes to get the A and take these millions, like overload themselves because they feel like that's what they have to do?
That's a good question. And I agree with you. Like a lot of times, these pressures are not from you. Maybe at one point it was, but now it's self-induced. Most of the kids who feel like they have to go and do all these classes, the pressure is not coming from mom and dad. It's self-induced. And something, triggered them to think that somehow if they get into these great colleges that they're going to be loved by you more. I mean, that's not your message. I know that. It's like my good friend I was telling you about. I know that's not your message. But somehow they kind of internalize that somewhere, right? One of the homework that I do for some of the kids is that, especially some of the kids who really feel like their SAT and their GPA wasn't that very good, what I do is I have them look at, like, what is it what you really, really want to do? And, if they say, hey, I want to be an anthropologist, well, then I give them a homework. It's like, okay, tell me some of the anthropologists you want to be like. And they look up and they do study and they go to their website. And I ask them to look at their educational background. And sometimes some of the people, like a real, like Noam Chomsky is one of my favorite stars. Howard Zinn, one of my favorite stars. Now, like their maybe undergrad, history wasn't so stellar, but like they got better as they went on and studied. And when they look at like different scholars who are doing the things that they want to do, they recognize that there's a lot of diversity within that, and they can get there in so much different ways. And especially for like my Asian American or Asian clients, like they're understanding of good colleges is just so narrow. You know, it has to be Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, you know, one of those things, right? But like, did you look at Williams College? Williams College is hard to get into Harvard. You know, did you ever look at like Vassar or Barnard? There's so many great, wonderful universities and colleges that's outside these Ivy League. And so one of the, you know, when they find out, okay, this is the kind of person that I want to be an anthropologist, I want to be an architect, you know, I want to be whatever they want to be. And then when they start to look at like, wow, there's so many different ways to slice the cake, so to speak. And, you know, if their GPA wasn't good enough to go to these colleges and universities they want to get the first try, there are other ways to do it. You know, junior college is a great way to do it, right? There are just so many different routes. And once we can start talking about them, they get kind of excited about it. Okay, maybe I won't do it just like the traditional way, but there may be other ways I can navigate towards that.
Do you almost think maybe that there are too many options? And then, you know, to pick on the APs, back when I took the APs in the dark ages, there were 5. Now there are 34. And when I looked at colleges, you know, here was my first choice, and figure out everything I could do to get into this college, and here was my backup plan. You know, my godson, who's as a freshman, he was sent applications to 12 colleges because he felt that was what he had to do. I mean, are we giving them too many options and too many paths? And it's almost that paralysis of analysis. They don't know what to do because there's so many, it's too broad of a scope.
It's a good question. I don't think I have an answer for that, but I think you have an answer for that.
Yeah, but I'm not perfect.
All right. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, if you want, you can send links to me.
Okay.
I could put it in the newsletter.
Great.
They're at the front. Oh, you want one of these?
Late. Do you want to get a copy of the presentation?
Which table?
I didn't even notice the sign building. The sign.
Where the sign? I didn't. I'll check out.
If there's not, tell me, and I'll make sure you get one.
Okay, I'll check out there. All right, thank you.
Where is it that you want us
to give our email?
No,
Is it at the front desk?
Yeah,
I
it's
was
like
just
that.
telling you that,
I can just send you the links, and then I can put it in the newsletter.
That'd be phenomenal.
Because he doesn't have it,
Yeah.
then everybody can have it.
Phenomenal.
Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you for coming.
This is sending on one side.
Thank you for setting this up. Yeah, you're welcome, thank you for doing this. By chance. A what? You did it? No. No, okay. The kitchen, are you kidding? My maintenance kitchen is. Okay. And my manager. You know what kitchen sets this one? Yeah. I have a seventh. Okay. Oh, cool. If she belonged to you.
You never know, right?
Yeah, no, that's
When I read it, I'm like, yeah.